Le Grande Bouffe.
The Big Feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. We are here, as always, to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer every week.
Hey, Cole, I haven't seen you in a while.
I know, it's been, well, almost a week.
It's been almost a week. What is our beer over here?
We have the lovely 60-minute IPA from DOGFISH Head, which is 6% alcohol. Not so heavy.
It's nice.
And this is the beer that introduced me to IPAs. This is the first IPA that I remember.
Oh, really? This is what you were like, hey, maybe I'll have an IPA podcast and then talk about movies every once in a while.
Yeah, this is long before I had that idea. So yeah, it's well, let's give it a little taste here. One sec, I'm pouring the beer. You can hear the liquid going into the glass. Maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, I have to say it has a thinner quality than I remembered. It's definitely a light IPA. I guess it's almost a session IPA by today's.
Are you saying you don't like it?
No, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying it's not. It's not the favorite that it was, but that doesn't mean that it's not a stand-up beer. It's certainly.
I believe I've been to the DOGFISH Head Brewery. Where is it? It's definitely in the Northeast. I want to say like. Yeah, Delaware. Okay, that's not the Northeast. But yeah, one of the few times
Milton, Delaware.
Yeah, I drive through Delaware like probably a dozen times a year, and like rarely spend any time outside of one of those rest stops there. But one of the few times we did hit up the DOGFISH Head Brewery. I guess I like going to breweries. It's cool. What do you think? Do you go to breweries a lot?
I have been to some, and I always enjoy it. I like Firestone Walker. I've been to their brewery out in California, and yeah, it's great to go to breweries.
I was in San Diego for a wedding last year, and we did a brewery crawl, and that was cool. The town is lousy with breweries. You can really just walk to like a dozen of them, and they're great.
Really got it going on for sure.
I lived in Nashville. Nashville's got a kind of brewery culture coming up, but I have to admit, and I'm going back in about a week, so I'll judge, but the beers were not killer yet. They're still figuring it out, kind of. But they're like cool restaurants there.
Well, DOGFISH Head, it was founded by this gentleman, Sam Calagione, who is a big, charismatic figure in the craft beer world. And he's a very beloved guy. So DOGFISH Head, I think, is very highly revered in the craft beer world. And Sam Calagione is a significant reason for that because he's a really nice guy.
Hey, cool. Watch this. I might say we live in a veritable golden age of craft beers. And when I think of golden age, I can't help but think of 1930s Hollywood.
Funny that you should mention that. And you know who else was thinking a lot about 1930s Hollywood was Nathaniel West.
Is that the author of the book this is based on?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
When did the book come out?
So the first edition came out in 1939.
That's what I thought. So it's so clearly, not to jump into it too much before we talk about what it's actually about, but it's so clearly a pre-war version of Hollywood, and the movie at least is directly alluding to FDR saying we're going to stay out of the war. It's just crazy that this would come out before then, and to have the content, which I assume was still in the book that is in the movie. It's funny. It seems like one of those things where they had to wait a long time to be able to make the film that would do any justice to the book because of what you can allow.
Yeah, I hear that. So the picture is directed by the late great. Yes, he did. He passed away in 2003. John Schlesinger, famous for such masterpieces as Midnight Cowboy and Marathon Man.
So what is this? What is this movie about? I would love a IMDb version of it, and then to pick that apart because it's
So the IMDb version is an art director in the 1930s falls in love and attempts to make a young woman an actress despite Hollywood, who wants nothing to do with her because of her problems with an estranged man and her alcoholic father. I would say that's one of the worst summaries that I've ever read.
That's got nothing to do with that movie I just saw.
IMDb, you're falling down on the job. That's lousy. Yeah. Well, okay. So the story.
I read the Wikipedia one. That was way better.
Yeah. So yes. All right. So I'm looking at the.
Well, we can do this too. We can figure this out.
Sure. Yeah. And the real thing about the film is that it's clearly based on a novel, and you can tell you know when you're watching a movie that a couple of screenwriters put together, or 5 screenwriters, or now, I mean, it seems like everything's written by committee these days. But this movie, the novelistic underpinnings are there every step of the way. And to me, that makes it a much stronger film and a much more intricate movie. There's so many great details of character and place and behavior and social norms. This movie is really thick with text and subtext.
You know how I know it's based on a book is because your top billed actor doesn't show up for literally 45 minutes. Because I was watching this and I was like I was like 1975. Donald Sutherland looks amazing. I like thought because it's really
yeah, he doesn't show up for a long time. But I think well, this film is interesting in that way that the guy who is you think the main actor, William Atherton, plays this character Todd Hackett, or as Karen Black's character Faye calls him, Toddy. And he's great. William Atherton. I'm really, I have to say, I'm not really familiar with William Atherton's work.
He's the one who I thought was Donald Sutherland for
did you really?
45 minutes, and I was like, I don't understand this. Like Keith or Sutherland must have already been alive, but this guy looks like he's like 21. Like, what the hell?
So the movie. What's the name of the little apartment complex? Is it the San Bernardino Arms?
Yeah, I think that's it. The San Bernardino Arms. One of these kind of classic, dumpy, like studio adjacent little apartment complexes that you heard a lot of these stars came up from. Like, it's not a very reputable place to be living at, right?
No, it has kind of a faux Mexican vibe with the way the plaster, and they have this little archway where the stairs go up into the courtyard, and so that's where these characters meet. That's where we meet these characters, and so Atherton's character Todd is a production designer who has an in. He knows a Hollywood producer who can get him some work, and so
he's a waspy Yale. Like, clearly he's been around in some.
Is it Yale or Harvard? I can't remember.
I think it's Yale.
Okay.
He's been around in some rarefied circles, and he seems like he's getting a bit, I would say maybe like emasculated from being jerked around by the system. Like, he's got the job, but he wants to be working. And this is the 30s, The thing that we really don't see at all is the Dust Bowl images. This is the Depression. This is the pre-war America.
Right.
But we're just seeing the real like hollow, like chintzy, like a sort of barnacles of the studio system.
And he's certainly somebody, he might be book wise, but he's not worldly wise by a long shot. And so his neighbor is Karen Black's character, Faye Greener, and she lives with her pops, played by Burgess Meredith. And she's been a chorus girl, one of the many faceless chorus girls whose legs are always kicking up and they have a big smile on their face, and she gets some small part. Is it a Cecil B. DeMille film that she's in?
That DeMille? That's like
it's a period epic drama that she's gotten a little role in,
Are you talking about the Aladdin one?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like a real movie, right? Like I think they basically did a shot for shot of that real Aladdin flick where he's flying around on
Magic carpet.
On magic carpet.
Flying carpet. And so her dad is played by the great Burgess Meredith, and he's this
of Rocky fame.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This is
and Magic. If you've never seen Magic,
I haven't seen Magic.
Magic is a good one. Scary. The guy with the ventriloquist with the puppet.
So this is
kills.
This is what like this was 74, 75. I think it was 75, which means it was basically filmed the same year as Rocky. It would have been about the same. Burgess Meredith could not be playing more different roles.
Oh boy,
what a treasure! This guy's amazing. He's this old vaudeville guy who's just been.
He's a huckster. He's got his little tap dance and he's got his little energy and he goes out the door and he's gonna sell his potion.
Snake oil shit. And it seems like he's fallen on hard times. I think he probably used to be like a legitimate vaudeville entertainer when that was an industry, and so he's the window into that dying world. Or dead world,
right?
And so he's out there selling his snake oil, and he's entertaining, and people's reaction is telling. They're like, "Oh, who is this guy? What is this?" And then as soon as he pulls out his briefcase, people are like, "Get out of here, buddy!" And his shtick is he'll walk onto your backyard while you're mowing the lawn and be like, "Hey, son, I see you might need some of this over here. I got the all-purpose solvent."
So he's really working the angles, but he's got a hard row to hoe because he's going out there in the hot LA sun and just knocking door to door. But his daughter is there to pick him up when he falls down, and so I just want to get to how he meets the Donald Sutherland's character, because the way the whole sequence is designed and performed. Excuse me, the beer is really coming on strong here. His character's name is Harry Greener, and he's trying to sell his snake oil to Donald Sutherland, and Sutherland wants nothing to do with it. But Sutherland's character is this very interesting. He's got a little bit of money.
Hey, what's his name?
The Donald Sutherland character. Let me look.
You don't know his name? You seriously?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my. Okay, I can't. I was trying to stave that off for a while.
Okay, no, we can hold it. We can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can give it away now. Now's a good time. You brought it up, so you go for it.
His name is Homer Simpson.
Homer Simpson.
I've heard about this character. I hadn't seen this movie, and this movie is not very well known outside of film buff circles. It's of classic kind of Hollywood movies about Hollywood. This doesn't come up that quickly, even though it completely should. But I've heard Gilbert Gottfried in his podcast brings up this character named Homer Simpson a bunch of times. I want to look up whether Matt Groening, he must have Groening, whether that must have been who they just very randomly took it. There's no real connection character wise, because you were talking about the character. It's a very, very strange, subtle performance. The Wikipedia just described him as sexually repressed, which I feel like doesn't even start to.
Oh
get to
no,
it.
there's so much more to this character. He's really passive aggressive. He's effeminate, and he is. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of inner turmoil in this character, and nobody better to portray that than the great Donald Sutherland. His performance, when you put these performances together, and nobody's phoning it in. This is the real story. Karen Black just blows the screen apart.
She's so unsettling. Karen Black is so unsettling.
I think her character, they didn't really call people bipolar back then. I think
I was about to say is you have to talk about personality disorder when talking about her.
For sure.
Yeah. It's a kind of a. I guess this. Imagine in the book, it would have been a very incisive look at these people who are trying to be famous, and that for every Jean Harlow, there was probably 1,000 women who were trying to make it into the industry and were just white knuckling it. And also you have to be somewhat, in my opinion, disturbed to desire such ridiculous like fame and like scrutiny from the public, so you're already a little bit off. And then, there's only going to be 5-10 actresses at a time that fill that role.
Oh yeah. Well, but and that's why the title of this film, The Day of the Locust, is so evocative, because it really is about these generations of people that converged at the same time on Los Angeles to live out some kind of imagined dream of fame and fortune that 99% of them did not find.
Yeah, so you have Atherton's character, who is Todd, who's a set designer who has
he gets a gig. He gets a gig right away, and he's committed to his work. He's good at what he does. He may not be great, but he's he's got some skill, and he puts together some pretty interesting designs for this film within the film.
There's something unusual about his character, where you imagine if this was just written as a movie, he would have been a bit more of an underdog. Like, that's where it really does feel like a more nuanced novel. He's not really a ladies' man, but I notice in the scene where she first comes over, he does know how to work it. Like, he's not Homer Simpson. He's not bumbling around sexually. He clearly like had women when he was at Yale. So he's not like this like
he's not completely naive.
He's not this like naive underdog, but he's also not the first one picked to actually head up a movie in this. And then he speaks up for himself, and he gets moving. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how you would describe his arc, because again, if it was just a movie, he would have been like the underdog who gets a big shot, falls in love with a girl, maybe winds up with her, or even if it's like a tragic version of this movie, she would like wind up dead, and it would be like an image of the loss of his innocence. And it's so much more nuanced than that.
It certainly is, and you've hit on something intrinsic to the film, which is that there really isn't anyone to root for. I found myself personally rooting for Homer Simpson's character the most, because
he's the least bad guy.
That's it. That's it. But everybody's pretty much a bad animal in this film, and the Nathaniel West writing comes through a lot in the script and the dialogue, and I love the scene where Harry is describing his daughter to Todd, and he's talking about how she guards that thing like the family jewels. Her mother was quite the opposite. You could breathe on her and she'd open right up. And this kind of dialogue it's a little shocking. It's so direct. And when it's a father talking about his daughter in this way, it's all the more shocking. But by the same token, he knows the games that this woman plays, and Todd, he's very quick to express his love to her. He's which isn't even true. He doesn't love her. Mm-hmm. He says that he loves her because he wants to get in her pants, as does everybody who meets her. But he's just playing his angle, and it doesn't work. And he, for some reason, he follows her. And it's clear that she's nothing but trouble, and yet he's gonna follow this woman.
Yeah, there's a lot of the specter of rape that follows her, and it's a bit of a window into what these women went through and looking for success. And I think
it's very interesting that you brought that word up, because there is a scene in the film that's very unsettling, where Todd's character attacks her and attempts to rape her.
It's he's basically the protagonist, and in about late Act 2, I'd say it's actually the transition from Act 2 to Act 3, is that scene. He tries to rape her, and then you see what the relationship is after that, which is not a thing you normally see, because that a protagonist would never do something like that in a traditional like Hollywood movie. So you're not really going to see what the relationship between those people would be like. So that's a very unusual unsettling.
And it's also interesting because you see how she teases that level of tension, because she takes Todd and this actor, well, not other actor, but this actor who she's done some work with,
cowboy guy,
the cowboy, and she takes them both to see the Magic Carpet movie, and she's sitting between them, and she's making out with both of them, or at least attempting to make out with both of them. So she's really into group sex, is where her head's at, I think, and at least at that moment. And she doesn't care anything about anyone's disposition or attitudes toward
she's
that
also
kind of behavior.
She's also trying to actively
make people jealous.
Yeah, and but use people. She's not actually just promiscuous, it seems like. I mean, I'm looking back, and I don't think that there's actually that many times where we see her having sex, and
it may only be once.
It may be once, and you know what? If she's just trying to get it in, good for her. That's awesome. But it's definitely, I think, being portrayed that she's doing this more out of advancing her career, out of using the one power that she does have that has currency in this Hollywood, and she's not talented.
Right.
So she's doing what I think a lot of people were put in, was having to use your sexuality to your advantage, but it's also all so tainted and strange because of her unhingedness. The first scene where she's singing Jeepers Creepers while her dad is having a stroke, I had to stop, pull up my iPhone, record it while I was playing, because it is the craziest scene I've ever seen since I've found it online. But that's really, really wild, and just fits in this movie. And if you haven't...
Yeah, and that goes back to the sequence that I was talking about with Donald Sutherland, where Burgess Meredith is trying to sell his snake oil, but he's come out of the heat, and he could be having a stroke or a heart attack or heat stroke. Something's going on. He's not well. And somehow the daughter, I don't know, they don't call her, but somehow she knows.
She sees his bag or something outside. She's
somehow
walking
nearby,
around looking for him.
and also she's kind of in on it, because she comes in.
Yeah, I wonder that was a scam that they were doing. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, that's how she got lunch.
Right. So she comes in, and that's how she meets Homer Simpson, to save her father, who's just passed out in Simpson's living room, and that's how she meets her new prey. And of course, at the end of the sequence, Burgess Meredith, Harry, ends up getting $1 instead of just a quarter from Homer.
Yeah, I actually found myself, like you were saying, really liking that this is a film based on what's clearly a much longer novel, and that I think films that are based on things that have a lot more content than you can fit into a shorter film, there's a way to do that where you're not sacrificing the plot, but you have to sort of infer what's going on in there, and it's just this richness of nuance.
It's such a rich tapestry of characters. There's the dwarf who lives in the San Bernardino Arms, and he has a big blowout fight with his wife, and he has to seek refuge with Todd. Todd takes him in and kind of helps him out, and then there's the cockfighting sequence.
That's a real cockfight, right? They're not.
Yeah, this
not
is
CGI.
Yeah, no, this is back in the days before PETA came along and said you can't have things like that in your movies.
Unsettling.
And
it's not just the fighting is unsettling. The little person is licking the blood off of him, out of love. It's a very, very strange.
And that's the thing is that's why these character archetypes ring so true, because Nathaniel West obviously was writing. I mean, I'm not sure how much of this stuff is anecdotal, but he had seen these people, he had met these people, he had hung out with these people, and so every interaction that you see, you really feel the background of these characters, and the climax of the film has a resonance with 1900, which is my favorite film of all time, and Donald Sutherland in that film. He kills a boy, and in this film, he kills a girl, and
an androgynous girl. We could go into so many of these things, but
well, there you go, and that's the thing about this movie. You've got these kinds of characters where there's like an LGBT child in the movie.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if she's transgendered, but she certainly
there's
has.
a trans woman who does like a cabaret performance, which Homer seems uncomfortable by. Homer like won't drink alcohol. And Homer seems a bit off-put by that performance, which I'm sure, like, that sounds like one of those weird footnotes in Hollywood history, is that there was probably some trans woman that like had a nightclub act that was the hottest ticket in town, and we would never like imagine that would have been around now. But there is this thing of
it's a drag queen, right? That's a drag queen.
Yeah, it's a drag queen, but also just fucking killing it.
Oh yeah,
that's an amazing performance.
It is. It really is.
And I wonder if there's something about gender norms in here where I was thinking about this on the way over. I feel like what is unsettling about, like, in the context of this movie, about a person who is androgynous is there is seemingly like a lack of needing the other sex to justify or complete you. Everyone so desperately needs something in a very transactionary way with people of the other sex in this, whether it is sex, whether it is getting them to put you in the movie, whether it's to take care of you as your daughter. But there's also stuff about the commentary on the Hollywood system where there's a set collapse that hurts. Did anyone get killed in that? No one's killed.
No one's killed.
The AD is critical condition.
Right.
And they're just
many broken bones.
And they're like, well, we had the signs up. I don't know what happened.
And this is where you see Todd is the protagonist of the film, and he fights a little bit for integrity. He makes the point a couple of times that the signs weren't properly placed. But then he gets shot down. But then when he brings it up,
he's offered a haircut. It's like,
right,
Johnny boy, how about I buy you a haircut? And like, you stop asking these fucking questions.
Yeah, because it's all the bean counters sitting around in the barbershop with the producer of the film and Todd. And then when he goes back for the meeting with the producer, I don't know the architect on that house that he lives in with the pool with the horse in the pool.
Amazing.
There's so much detail in this film.
Horse in the pool.
I think it's a Frank Lloyd Wright designed home.
Oh, is it really?
I believe that's what I think. And there's a swimming pool, and inexplicably, or as is explained actually, there is a big white statue of a horse at the bottom of the swimming pool.
That feels like an anecdote. That feels like...
Yeah, that really does. It's too weird to not be true.
So, why did this movie come out in 1975?
That's a good question. Why were they ready to make this? Why was Hollywood ready to make this movie?
Yeah, and like let me throw out like an idea.
Yep.
So we have like essentially the death of the studio system. Good 6-7 years earlier, Cleopatra murders. Was it Paramount or MGM? One of them. And so we're in 75. We're in the middle of the new Hollywood, where you can get these kind of crazy movies like this made today. You couldn't get this movie in this form made today.
Yeah, I think it's
a
good point. I think that this is definitely a product of the Raging Bulls.
And so you have
Easy Rider.
You have like to this day still this nostalgia for this Hollywood system, and even a movie like Hail Caesar that just came out has this. Even though that's about like a bad guy Eddie Mannix, that's still really kind of glorifying it. Like Eddie Mannix in the movie is
this movie is an indictment of Hollywood. It's an indictment of Los Angeles, and I mean, we keep skirting around the issue of the Gothic elements, but it really is a neo-Gothic film.
It's gorgeously shot. It's crazy because it's like. So here's like if I were to like start trying to write a thesis about this film, I would say this movie executes perfectly the elements of what the studio system could do right. It's beautiful cinematography. It even recreates these like amazing
and it's
set pieces.
Conrad Hall, by the way.
It's of course. Easy Rider, right? So he's like the kind of name of this new Hollywood. It executes these things perfectly, and it also says like, but fuck you for thinking that system was not a horrible, corrupt thing that was both hurting the people involved in it and the masses that watched it, who kind of get their comeuppance and critique in the final scene. And it's saying it's like I think there's something optimistic, almost saying like we can take these great things and leave behind these like immoral, terrible villains that were behind this, or it's just nihilistic and saying no, that shit was terrible. You know what was happening when Ginger Rogers was speaking on the red carpet?
Yeah.
People were being fucking trampled to death.
It does. This movie pulls no punches, and I do want to say that if you want to understand the genius of Conrad Hall's cinematography, watch In Cold Blood. And it's black and white, and it's amazing, and there is one scene that happens. I'm not going to give it away. You'll know it when you see it. But it is probably the most amazing visual cinema image that I've ever seen. But I did want to...
Is it raining in this scene?
Yeah, it's raining in the scene. But I also wanted to mention that of course, he was the DP on Marathon Man, and that's a pretty serious movie as well. And as we mentioned, that's also from the
Schlesinger,
same director.
So I think this is a good episode of our show to just highly encourage people seeing this and put some context.
And also, the screenplay for this is Waldo Salt, amazing screenwriter. So I think that this is an undervalued film. I think to me this film is a masterpiece. It's an absolute A+ of a movie. And if whatever critics have tried to undermine this picture and say that it isn't that good for numerous picayune reasons, they are wrong.
Do you have any offhand of what people are to try to undercut this film with? Because it seems, I mean, if anything, I'd say it's like its day is more is still coming and is now. It's so trite to say something is ahead of its time, but I to compare it again to films that are throwing back to this exact same era, like Hail Caesar. This rings so much more true, and is also like celebrating the great cinematic possibilities there. There's this great little surreal scene that happens at the beginning where we're seeing Todd look at the Napoleonic set that they're building, and for just a brief part of a shot, it fades into you're seeing the set. So you see the set, and you see the people on it, and then you see the people filming it, and you see the rest of the soundstage.
And that's also how the film ends. That's the climax of the film. It has that same kind of imagery where you're combining this. This is the thing that cinema can do the best, which is to take you into this blended reality of reverie and imagination and dream and all of that stuff. Hey, there's a buzzer. You know what that means, folks? It's time for us to split. But let me just say that Ebert said that the problem was that this film misplaces its concerns with its characters in the use of metaphors. And all I have to say about that is wrong. Thank you all for listening. Remember to turn your cell phones off when you're walking, driving, or watching a movie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.